guys, welcome back to My Steps to Sobriety, a show on YouTube and as a podcast with me, your host, Stefan Neff. I've got another guest on, and I'm excited to interview Kimberly Bell, because Kimberly is a woman who is on the same mission as I am, to make this world a better place. And she is going out there and speaking out loud, actually shouting it from the rooftops, that we need to talk about the problems in our society, the intergenerational trauma, the bias that is out there, the problems with regards to domestic abuse, of violence. She is trying to give women specifically and those that have not yet found their voice, she tries to give them a voice and tries to empower them to live a life away from shame, guilt, trauma, all that, but tries to help them to transform into powerful beings which can help themselves and others around them to live a better life. So this is a beautiful mission, and I'm dead excited. Kimberly, thank you so much for coming onto my show.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure and an honor. Thank you so much.
An absolute pleasure on my side. I mean, how you don't wake up one day when you're 6 or 7 years old and say, "Hey, you know what, mommy? I gonna be a defender of women. I gonna go out there and make the world a better place for women."
Absolutely.
No 6-year-old said that. Tell me, who did you want to be when you were a child?
I believe through my educator, the first educator that I had, by the time I got to the end of the course of the elementary school years, I wanted to be a teacher because she had impacted my life so much. So I said, I wanted to be a teacher. Mm-hmm.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. Mm-hmm. Was that because this educator showed you love? What impressed you so much on this educator?
She gave me hope, and she saw hope. She did not look like me. She was different. We're African Americans, of course, but she was not the same race. And I believe she wasn't even affiliated with the religion that my family was. They were very religious, my adopted family. And she in the 70s, didn't even really knew my background of them being my adopted family. But I had tests ran through kindergarten to first grade that had diagnosed me mild retardation, but really I was going through PTSD. So with the mild retardation, that had me transferred to her room, where I had spent 6 years with this resource educator. And she had said to my parents, she believed that I should be seen. And when they wouldn't embrace it, within that week, she looked at me and she said, and that was the first time I've ever heard anyone say that to me, that stuck with me through the 6 years with her, is that I was a special child. She said, "You're a special child, and I'm not going to give up on you."
Beautiful.
And she stayed, and I stayed with her. I read the same book for 6 years. I couldn't remember. I could not retain memory. I could get to a certain number. Like, for instance, I'll give you an example, from 1 to 18, and I would stop to 18. And then the very next day, I couldn't pass through 18. I would go to 14 maybe, or 25, but it had to be repetitive. And for 6 years, I had one book called The Izzy that I read with her almost every day. And miraculously, 6th grade, I prayed a childlike prayer. And I prayed to this God that my adopted dad I used to hear him pray to. And I used the words of, I just didn't want to be different. I experienced the bullying in that time with the kids wasn't so kind, of knowing that I was being taken in her classroom instead of their classroom, and only engaging with them during recess, because it wasn't integrated at that time like it is now. So with special support. So when I would go outside to recess, that was one of the eras, not everyone, but few that was not as kind would say, call me the little retarded brown skinned girl, So I got to a place where, because I had formed this silence, that I felt like my voice didn't matter because of the things that I had went through prior. Eventually, I let it go on for a while. Eventually, I told the same educator that I didn't want to go out to recess, that they were picking on me. And she said, without going into detail, she said, would you like to be my helper? And I said, sure. And so I ended up, for the remainder of those recesses until I got out, I was her helper and was able just to go whenever I wanted to go. So that pulled the pressure. But I never told my parents about the bullying until I was grown. I told the educator. Yeah.
What a beautiful woman. What a beautiful angel that was sent into your life there.
That's exactly what I said. The angel. Periodically, different angels will come into your life. Yes.
Well, that's true. That's true.
Right,
sometimes in many lives, that's what I've written exactly in my book, My Steps to Sobriety. Sometimes those angels, they don't smell so good when they first come into your life, and they maybe don't look so good.
So good. Yeah.
Yet they
are.
Yeah. Oh, excellent. Yeah. Excellent. So there was, from the word go, a bias against you. Was it equally amongst from your parents down towards you? Did your parents think you were a good child, or did they think you were, to use your word, a retard?
No, my adopted parents knew, but they were in that generational era. They were absolutely older, where my adopted father only had a third grade education, and they were in that generational era that education wasn't, and our ancestors on the forefront as a priority. You get married, it was more of religion. You accept Jesus as your savior. You depend on him wholeheartedly to take you wherever you want to go. And any problems or anything that you have, what goes on in the home stays in the home, and you give it to Jesus. Everything you give to Jesus to fix, So as you asked me that, I can recall a couple of things, and I really believe that she wasn't saying those things to intentionally hurt me, but this is all that she knew. And from what they knew, they passed down to me. And so I remember her saying one of our tub bath times, and I'm just getting adjusted because these are new people. I was taken away, I was up until 5, I stayed with my biological parents. So I'm now, trying to adjust with a new family. And during our tub bath times, I remember her saying, you are a timid, frail. It was just a description of me. You're timid and you're so frail. And, of course, some positive was I was always a sweet child. Eventually, because she didn't know, my adopted mother didn't know how to really address and wasn't educated or wasn't trained from taking a child at 5 years old that knew her biological parents. She would say, you're not loving. You're an unloving child. You're hard to love, because I wasn't giving her what she wanted. So that kind of put a seed in my mind and my behavior of, then what can I do and how can I be more loving? Till I lost myself. I was giving and giving and giving when I was created as a loving human being.
Oh, dear.
Yeah.
But you're describing the typical behavior of a child that has been abused.
Yes. A traumatic experience, yes. And had been separated and had experienced a loss beyond my control of 2 parents that were supposed to have been protecting me, supposed to have been loving me, and then kept my older sister, which was 2 years older than me, and never reunited. So, yeah.
Oh, dear. And what a brutal story. But a story that is so common out there.
Yes, yes.
But I mean, you now know the trauma that you have gone through. At that time, you don't know. You can't compare.
Yeah.
This is normal. This is something that is happening to you, and you're struggling, and you're making things up. No one teaches you how to do.
Right.
You didn't have counseling, I assume. That was in the 70s, 80s. No one gave a damn about those kind of things.
Right. No. And I described a lot of it during the time when I look back at that 5 or 6 year old, is I was so confused.
Yeah.
So confused. Yeah.
Oh my God. Oh my God. And then again, to a degree, there was this angel at school who nurtured you and who was there for you. Often enough, when that happens, actually, whilst your brain still struggles with the trauma, it is not uncommon that then children actually become very good at school, because that's where they really focus upon. Did that change happen to you?
It absolutely did.
Did those blockages disappear?
Yeah. Yes. I told you, I said that prayer and at 6th grade, but it was it was a work of miraculous prayer, that healing touch. And also, as you said, that angel that consistently stayed with me and continued to plant that seed of love and hope. And regardless of, I'm a different child, I'm a different race, I felt it. I knew that she was there every day that I went to school, whether I was confused, like you said, and trying to adjust, and I was trying to wing a lot, getting introduced to the extended family of theirs. I was their only child. So together. So I was the younger one there with this older generational era parents that was very religious, very structured in their religion. And she, that consistency. When I said that prayer at 6th grade and went to 7th grade, I tested out, was on honor roll, 7th and 8th grade, just like you would have to go back and look at the report, which had said mild retardation, would not read or write effectively in her life.
But it just shows the trauma. It just shows what trauma at an early stage does to children.
Right.
My goodness. And we know that. I mean, there are, if you look at young children in refugee camps who have gone through very traumatic warlike situations or internal displacement, you see their artwork, and it is absolutely atrocious. Often they are nonverbal. They don't know what to do, and it's just their mind protects them, and often enough completely guards and disguises the trauma and pushes it to the side. Wow. And it's so common out there. It's scary when you look at the figures for childhood abuse, sexual, emotional, and physical. They are horrendous, absolutely horrendous.
Right.
And whoever is listening now to or watching this video, because it doesn't matter in which society you are, in which part of the world you're living. Unfortunately, we as a society are failing our children, and we are failing our women, or sometimes our men. We are failing our men just as much. But we will come to that. There is so much where we can actually maybe just change one little core belief, and out of that, maybe something else will change, and something else will change.
Right.
Wow, what a background. But now you found the fire. Now you were learning, and I know it from myself. I was initially labeled as not very clever, and I would probably do a menial job, not handyman, more, I would never go to university kind of a thing. That was my initial assessment at school. And then I suddenly found that beautiful power in learning and in proving to my teachers, no, I'm actually not dumb. I can do that. Did you find that fire? Did you find that addiction, so to speak, to you want to be the best?
I did. In 7th and 8th grade, I did. I did. And it felt absolutely great. But it was in that educational area. The other part, just, because of not being trained and, not, now I can, speak my truth. There were adults that were broken. There were adults that was healed. There was adults that was uneducated. There were adults that were, that had not went through their own issues, so, yeah.
That's a problem. But having said that, once you actually start pouring petrol on that fire to prove yourself, that doesn't go away. I think if I look back, this must have been my first addiction. The addiction of finally finding approval and love, and you keep going. And maybe that in addition to the PTSD later, maybe that again was the fire that drove me forward to constantly learn, to constantly work hard. I became a workaholic before I became an alcoholic. Did the same features come through in your life?
Yeah, I was on a quest of proving. Yeah. And then it spilled over to I felt the need of people had to validate me and my feelings, and it worked against me as well as worked for me on some things, but it yeah.
What were some of the examples where it worked against you?
Getting into toxic relationships with the opposite sex that
classic,
I seeked approval. I never found my self-worth until now, and I seeked to them to accept me and to approve that I'm good enough, I'm worth, being treated, being respected, when I was clearly worth it before I met them. Yeah.
But you're so right. You're so right. If you don't get that love at an early stage, you're hunting for it. And you become the people pleaser. You're so right.
Yes.
And you put everyone else's needs before you.
Yes.
With hindsight, did you feel that you deserved love? Or were there some screwed up beliefs that actually, sometimes we ask ourselves, why me? Why me? And then your brain comes up with about 20 reasons why you. And were the same crappy reasons coming up for you?
That I deserve love?
Or that you don't, in actual fact?
It was very hard for me to understand love. It was very hard for me to understand love because of the foundation. I've always loved my biological mother, but yet it was undeniable she never loved me. And in one ear, I would have my adopted mother say, how could you still love someone that doesn't love you? And here I'm trying to pour all the love that I have in me to you. And I'm young and I'm saying, but this built-in love for her, I used to look at her and think she was one of the most beautiful women in the world. And what was it about me that she couldn't caress me, or she couldn't tell me, or she couldn't lay eyes on me that I could feel that she loved me and she wanted me? I would always feel the opposite. So I was, I was very, that broken foundation of confused about love and deserving of love, and the expectations of love was very hard, was very challenging, until I had to go on a very much mission and passion of finding myself and loving me despite of, and getting that balance of everything that happened, all the bad that I'm not responsible for, that I held responsible for many years, of what was going on with her and how she treated me, and how she, wasn't willing to accept me, or as I wanted, and as I do for my children, fight for me. As a mother, no matter what you could say to me that the father wanted, it wouldn't be nothing that could tear me away from my child, or a bond away from her. Yeah. So
what made that change? What made that change happen? Obviously, there must have been either a series of events or an event.
Oh, yeah. It was a series. It was a series, because I used a lot of stuff, and I used a lot of different coping, as you were saying. My mind was just going into memories of I never did alcohol or drugs, but I searched for older men. I searched for relationships that I just felt that I was bound to, that I wanted, until I had to go. I mean, it was just like either you go or you're going to die in it, and that had literally had to be the choices and the relationships that I was in for me to break away. And I went through a series of working. I went through a series of whatever people thought that I should be doing, that's what I was doing. Preaching in the pulpit, being the overachiever and the outstanding MVP mother, of starting at 15 now and having 4 by the time I'm 25. But it was what I knew that I was expecting from the world, or from my vision, from the outside looking in, that they wouldn't expect nothing different. So what I had to do was try to reach that, regardless of whether it was mentally anguish at times. At times I was crying, at times I was depressed, at times I was filled with anxiety. I found myself when it was time for me to go to court for anything, just breaking down because of the healing from justification, and justice wasn't dealt with, wasn't accepted, because I was still wrestling with and not accepting that it was unjust of what had happened. I was just putting a Band-Aid on it and saying that, okay, it happened, you'll be all right. I even could hear other people saying, well, the older you get, the more you should be able to get over it. Right. What's done has been done. You were fortunate. I even was hearing in the back of my mind, you were fortunate to have parents. You know how many people went from foster home to foster home, and it was like until I stopped letting those thoughts or those other people's word minimize my pain, minimize my reality of accepting, hey, look, I'm a human being. I'm a human being, and this has happened. And I have to bear the truth. I have to accept it. And then I have to go from there and accept it and embrace. Now, what do I want? How can I love me and find my self-worth?
Beautiful. Beautiful. Did you find role models? Did you find people in your life, or did other angels come into your life?
Other angels did. Yes. Yes. And I had to embrace them, and I had to learn some of the things that I did. Like I was saying about working at one time, I was working 3 jobs. One time I was working 2 jobs, going to school. Like I said, I never got into drugs or alcohol, but I went into pacifying, eating, not taking care of myself. I remember going in the hospital for a bad kidney infection that kept reoccurring because I'm just like, my focus is my kids, my focus is my relationship, hell with myself, and I remember in my 20s, the doctor coming in there with the kidney specialist saying, Kim, you really don't want to go on dialysis the age that you are, but you're pushing it. So, I mean, I experienced all of those things to be a witness or to inspire these things, suicidal thoughts. Because I haven't reached my determination or willpower to invest in me and to say, Kim, what are you worth? You are worth more than what you're getting. Have you ever took time to invest in yourself and understand how love works? That reciprocated love works both ways. And you're so deserving of that reciprocated love. You don't have to just give and not expect to be poured. So, I had to find, I had to go through a lot of those things and have those suicidal thoughts and have those moments that I had to break myself down and say, okay, let me learn something from this. Yeah.
Wow. What were your first steps that you took towards learning about this? I mean, for me, it was being in rehab, and it was there that I was forced to take part in sessions called feelings, where you actually explore your emotions and feelings, right. Those kind of things that I was chronically trying to drown because my feelings were not so nice. There was guilt, shame, and depression and trauma, and those were my feelings. Anger and resentment, that was my main driver. And it was nuts. And I didn't know what these things really were. These were all these waves of chemicals washing over me and through me, and they had me hostage. And it took me rehab to actually start experiencing them without numbing them or trying to escape them, and deal with them. And now that I actually got to know them, therefore I was then able to manage them better. Mm-hmm. How did that work with you? I mean, what were your steps to move forward?
Well, I tell you this, I had lost myself too many times. This last time, finding my voice was the first. Finding the courage to speak out and say no was so empowering that it moved my life. Yeah. And I remember literally saying to myself and saying to God, because I'm just a firm believer, that I literally said, no more toxic relationship, no more feeling that abuse is okay, mentally, spiritually, physically, emotionally. And I had to choose. And I remember processing and taking the step to first say, I can, and I have the ability to make this choice, because I had lived in such a silent cry. I had lived with this voice of letting the world speak for me, letting everyone else, speak for me and say, don't get married no more. You've been married like, well, how many times now? 3 times. I'm making a joke of it. And until I started surviving, I said, if I'm going to let the voice, the people speak for me, get over it. You're almost half of it. You should be over things that you had went through in your life. in the ministry. You don't have to expose all that. You don't have to be that transparent, until I started choosing and saying, no, you know what? I have the ability to make my truth be known, because if it changed my life for the better, and for me to find me, and for me to have a voice of courage to inspire someone else, that there were many, I wanted to give up, I wanted to give in, I wanted to just let people label me, then this is worth me having this ultimate life-changing process that I had to take the step and choose to do. But it started with me. And once I made those 3 or 4 vital steps of choosing that choice, and knowing that I had the ability to choose, I started literally saying, putting it into a priority stage of every morning, I process myself and saying, it's important that I choose me. How am I going to live this day in my purpose and feel worthy of this purpose, and go through the challenges and the obstacles that may come my way during this day, but not lose myself. I used to say, I remember putting something on there that once I gained a peace and found that peace, I fight just as hard to keep it. I fight just as hard to keep it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And that is a challenge that keeps going. That is a path that keeps going with every day. And this path is as intoxicating, I find, as any drug, as any behavior that we previously chose to numb ourselves or change our mind.
Yes. Yes.
It is weird. It is, I love that. I love when I grow. I went up until maybe a month, 2 months ago. Again, I got trapped in I need to do everything for everyone, work hard, nose to the grindstone, etc. And I lost myself again a little bit there. And then the last month too, I put literally the principle of the 5-minute gardener into place in my life, that I say, whatever happens, I'll do at least 5 minutes in each of those pillars that make me. And that might be 5 minutes of looking after my nutrition, 5 minutes of rehydration, 5 minutes literally in the garden, never more, never less. But at least, well, okay, never less. If I want to do a bit more, okay, you can do a bit more in that group of things, but actually be consistent every day. In other words, I'm trying to foster good habits. I'm trying to create habits by looking after myself.
Yes.
And by actually doing that and living more intentionally, I've made a lot of breakthroughs in my health, in my mental well-being over the last month or two. And it's beautiful. But I had forgotten that message. I had forgotten. I was preaching, yet I was certainly not living it for a little wee while. And that's okay. Sometimes your life goes on detours and you come back.
You gotta come back.
Exactly. And that's beautiful. So it is, nowadays I look at it and say, okay, lesson learned, but I do no longer feel guilty and whip myself bloody because, oh my God, I failed. I did not look after myself. Or, what about shame and guilt? Did those two evil twins, as I call them, did they play a role in your life?
Most definitely. Most definitely. My first child was when I was 15. Most definitely. And my first sexual introduction was with a extended family. at 12 years old, up until I was 1, in the adoptive family home. It wasn't intentionally, they didn't know about it, but it was guilt. It was a lot of guilt and shame. Very confusing, because he was a groomer, and he was a sex offender that had did prison time. But because our family was so religious, that he went to church with us one day and dedicated himself to Christ, and that was the door open.
I was about to say, brilliant new hunting crowd. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Okay. How did you deal with those things? I mean,
I had to accept and recognize that foundation, and it took half of my years on earth, but I had to accept it and embrace that, and recognize that that the intimacy, the sexual intimacy of wasn't normal, one, and what I wasn't responsible. It happened, and it was a broken foundation that it was up to me to not leave broken. That was the key of embracing. I had to find and accept. Once I found out, I had to, grab it, just like it grabbed me hard at 12, is that it was not normal. You were not responsible at 12. It was broken, and you don't have to leave it broken. Yeah.
I love it.
You have the choice. You have the choice, and you have the ability. And for years, I did not think that I had the ability, because, like you said, the shame and the guilt. But I can recall now processes that God allowed me to have myself into. I was able to witness to, he called for me. He sent for me on his dying bed. This uncle that, the sexual act, he had cancer, and I was in my 20s. I had my children, and he had called for me, and I went to his, girlfriend's house, and he was there, where he was, had hospice around him. And the first time that I went, he was actually, because I went there twice. The first time I went, it happened where he was in his right sounding mind, because I had to, that day, I forgave him, and he could hear it in my voice, and I could hear the man that were sick per se, because the way he, as soon as he seen my voice, my face, and heard my voice, he said, "There's my baby." This was the same thing that he used to say to me all the time. And I remember saying to his name and saying, "Uncle," I said, "I forgive you. It's okay." And then I went into, "Have you got it right with God?" And he said, "Yes. Yeah. So it was a very powerful moment, but I still had to deal with the residue. Get this. Even with that forgiveness time, and some people, and I'm blessed that, I had that moment. Some people did not get that moment with their, the victims got their moments with the people that had victimized them. I did, but I still had to go through the residue, because I remember going through toxic relationships, still having nightmares, still being haunted with certain touches would come back in memory that he did at 12 years old, that I had to face, and I had to accept, and I had to ask God to say, "Look, this next time I might be the Black Elizabeth Taylor, and we'll make a joke about it, but I'm gonna keep doing it until I get it right." But this last time, I'm going to make sure that I will be healed, and it will be transparent enough that that man, that husband that will come into my life, will be understanding, will feel, will embrace the hurt and the pain that I had been through, that I had to get healed from, and build that foundation of, will be as gentle as can be and understand that it's still a part of me and will always be a part of me, because that was the initial start. Yeah. So,
But that is, of course, what happens when you transform. When you
yes.
change, you become a new being, and therefore your vibes change, the way you hold yourself, the way you conduct yourself, the nonverbal language, everything changes. And with that, you without knowing, push those people away that are predators, because they suddenly realize, hang on, careful here. She actually will not accept your bullshit, and you will attract those men or those partners, if whatever your conviction is, you will attract those partners in your life and those people in your life that share your convictions, that share your beliefs, and that empower you further.
Yes.
So
You're absolutely right. Because that transformation, I see it, and I'm living that now in my season. Yeah. Before that last relationship that I was telling you about, and that wasn't not even 2 years ago, it was a pattern of that transformation hadn't came, where I was attracting what I felt inside and what I was sending out. Yeah.
Nice. Oh, beautiful. I mean, you are now going out there and spreading the word. You're sharing your story to make a difference to others, to actually plant that seed that it is okay to speak out. It is okay to not be okay. It is okay to seek help, to try to get out. Are you doing that? In which forums are you doing that nowadays?
I speak publicly. I do physical events, mentoring. So, and then, my occupation has me with the public all the time. So, I live this life. And then, as we talked about before we came on air, is, I'm very passionate on, living this at home. I'm now a mother of 4 adult children and 1 minor, and so I breaking generational curses. And I'm loving it. I'm really loving it, and I have the strongest relationship with the Savior than I've ever had in my whole life. And I'm not behind the pulpit. It's about my relationship. It's about who I connect with every day. And it's a choice that I do, like you were saying, consistently. I build on it. Yeah.
Do you speak also in church? I know you're a very, very, very religious woman. Do you actually go out there and literally speak out within the church about your experiences?
When I'm invited.
Okay.
When I'm invited, an interesting one. Have, yes. When I'm invited, I have, but and we're getting better. But it come from the era, and I'll be 49 next month. So, but coming from the generation era and culture, and we're getting better. We're not getting. I would like for us to get even more better than what, but being transparent and talking about society issues as boldly as I talk sometimes is not embraced. I speak against physical abuse because of image, because of people, wants an image to be more importantly than what is actually what they're living in. I believe the contrary. It's not about an image. It's not even about, you don't even have to give me a title. I want to have the truth and be totally transparent to help, to inspire, because at the end of the day, if I'm not living it, then everything else is in vain,
That's so true. And we know, for example, if you look at alcoholics, people who definitely fit the description of alcohol abuse disorder, 95% of them will live in a world of denial. they will look you in the eyes, and they actually even most of them, or most of their brain believes what they are saying, there is nothing wrong with me. And it's equally that not everyone is ready to face their trauma. Not everyone is ready to deal with what has occurred to them in the past.
Right.
And maybe they will never be ready.
Right.
Regrettably, my mum has gone through heaps of trauma in her life. And later on, I wanted to address that with her and wanted to find out how she felt as a younger woman. What did she experience? And she completely blocked everything. So there was she died without actually addressing any of those things that made her essentially quite a toxic woman and a bitter woman. And I can see that now, unfortunately, then, however much I try to understand things, the toxic personality was still overpowering everything else. And that's just hard.
Yes,
I think
it is.
So I very much think what you're doing is really, really fantastic. And same here. I mean, that's why I do this show. That's why I speak out. But are we both not preaching to the converted? Are we both not actually talking to those people who already got the news? How do we open the eyes of those people who are still hiding behind their white picket fence or behind their prayer book in church?
Right, right. Well, because we just have to continue to speak out. It'll get to them one way or another, but you're absolutely right. I had my adopted mother passed away during Easter, and I'm God's timing is the, it's the perfect timing. Even though I miss her very much, and we're all grieving in our own way. But I remember going to the hospital and visiting her, and she had said, because my book, will be a year in August, and she said, I heard you wrote a book. I said, and she's up there in age, she would have been 88 this year. And I said, yeah. She said, well, I hope you feel better. I said, yeah, I do. But I was able, I know, right? But I was able to talk to her because I was wanting her to, and she opened the door with, she had always portrayed, and she had this very controlling, and it went from, I could see from her siblings, because she was the oldest of all of them, very controlling, very much in that generational where what goes on in the home stays in the home. You don't want your image to look like you're, and then one end she's telling me, Kimmy, whatever you do, Kim, which my adopted dad called me Kimmy. She said, but Kim, whatever you do, you tell the truth. But then on the other end, she'll say, people are nosy. When we go out there, you may not look like us because see, I'm much browner than them. They were very light in color. And she said, you may not look like us, but people are nosy. We're living in our hometown where my biological parents are there. My biological siblings are there. She says, but you don't, when they come to you and they ask you anything, you just say that I'm your mama and he's your daddy. Okay. So I'm like, I'm torn. And so that's why I said with the silent cry, I was so glad that I got the courage. And that's where I get to being bold to inspire people that it may be a gradual step, like you said, and you may not be ready to process to be able to boldly, but if you could take one step at a time and first accept the brokenness, the addiction, the facade for years, the hiding, the guilt, the shame, accept and embrace that, there's another life waiting, ready for you. If you would only see that you can make that choice for yourself, So I said to her, when she has said, well, it seemed like you didn't love me. And I said, Mom, are you ready? I said, are you ready to listen? And this was in her hospital. This was this year before she passed away. And she said, okay. So it was just the ultimate time, like you said. But I said to her, I said, are you ready? And she said, yeah. I said, I want you to listen to me. I said, I just need you to listen at me, please, this time. And she said, okay. I said, Mom, I said, I love you, will always love you. That would never stop. I said, but you have to understand this. You did not get me at a child where I did not know my parents, which is very, very important. You would never accept that. You did not get me as a baby where I had dealt with for years. I wished, and I exposed this to her because I don't think I never exposed it to her in that truth and that heart. I said to her, I had wished many years that you and Daddy Bill had got me from an infant, so I wouldn't have hurt so much, that I didn't have to deal with rejection so much, that I wouldn't have to deal with the abandonment issues so much, that I came to you all as a baby. That day that you told me that my dad called you and said to come down here to see this new baby, this daughter that they had, and help name her, that you would have took me so that I could have loved you the way you wanted me to love you. But it did not happen that way. So if you could just listen to me now, that when you took me, I loved my mother and father, and that will never stop. But Mama, listen, I love you and will always love you. It's a difference. And you know what, Stefan? She just looked at me. She had tears in her eyes and she said, okay. So that was enough for me. Yeah, it was enough for me.
And
that was our last deep conversation.
And maybe it was just beautiful because it also gave her a closure. It gave her answers to questions that must have been nagging in her, because obviously they were her own needs. There was the need to feel loved, to you know, this maybe crazy belief system that was in her, that was handed down through generations to her, through her.
That she had a child and she never experienced, and you know, I remember she had a miscarriage and she could never have children of her own. But like you said, this maybe gave her closure, that this expectation and acceptance could have never came from this child, but yet she was still blessed to have a child that she raised. Yeah. And I, you know, and I'm so glad, because you know, before she passed away, you know, you know, going to her funeral and still with the generational, I done ruffled a lot of feathers because I told my truth in my book. So I was an outcast at the funeral. So, but I victorious, even through the hurt, sat there and dealt with everything at her funeral, and let her brother have his way of however he wanted it. And reminiscing in my mind that it's a tribute that I had read at the funeral that he didn't know nothing about, but it was read. Thank God it was read. But it was a memory, that the bathtub thing, that I started really crying, because had it not been for her and had it not been for my father, the bad outweighed the good, because her saying that I was frail and timid, they made me totally the opposite. Look at the woman that I am today. Yeah. Not at all frail and timid.
And what a transformation it is.
Yes. And, yes.
I mean, and that shows us the importance of an honest discussion, to be truly open and authentic, and actually address those things that happened in the past. We often try to numb ourselves and try to forget those things. Yet there is an incredible power in actually talking about those things, and talking about those things with a true honesty. With that, I mean, whenever you look at a big row, a big fight in a relationship, your own mind always changes it a little bit towards, well, maybe you being more the victim, and maybe putting down your contribution to whatever has caused that fight. So therefore, there's a good saying there. There is his story, her story, and the truth.
And then the truth. Yes.
Exactly.
Right.
And that is the same when it comes to things that happened in your past. That might be mental health problems, or there might be anything else, trauma that you've experienced. It's sometimes so powerful to give your side of the story, and then let the other person give their side of the story.
Because feeling like your truth doesn't matter or your story doesn't matter is just more detrimental to you and your process and your progress in life than anything. And that's where I had found out once I started keep applying this truth and this courage in one area to another, it kept, as you were talking about, habit becomes habit. I kept applying it to my other areas, my raising my children, applying the same guideline, it's the truth, the authenticness, the conversations that need to be said and shared, so and it's helped my growth, as you were saying, growing as I see myself going in different seasons in my life and in the different levels and different occupations, that I've learned that the boldness and the courageousness that transformation can inspire and help, even on your workforce, even in your work sector, even with the co-workers and stuff, because like you said, everyone's not at that stage and but if it just takes that one person. Sometimes it just takes you to accept and start that transformation process, and people start seeing it and want that feeling too,
Exactly. You're empowering by living, and to a certain degree, we all have made mistakes in the past. And that's where you can make living amends. Making amends is a powerful principle in the 12-step system. And it is actually a very beautiful, beautiful principle, because ultimately you have fucked up. You have done stupid things, bad things, sometimes illegal things. That was the past. And yes, you can beat yourself up for it, or you can say, actually, I have been treating in the past maybe that waitress in a really mean way. Now you cannot go back and find that waitress. That was 20 years ago in a different country, for crying out loud. But you can make a point of nowadays treating the cleaner as well as the CEO of the company. Treat everyone with the respect that you maybe wish to have. Now that is making living amends. And that is beautiful. That is suddenly where you show integrity. And integrity is defined by doing the right thing when no one is watching. And that is beautiful. And that is that you're laying little foundations. And every day you put another little bit of a foundation down. And very quickly you will find that the ground on which you walk is getting firmer and more solid. And seemingly these stones start not longer being pebbles, but actually start to grow together. And this foundation just gets stronger and stronger. And that's what I experience. And that's even when I then get dark thoughts reappearing, even when I get, wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and you get the worst of Stefan over the last 30 years condensed into, a little dream, and you think, of crying out loud, where's that coming from? I can deal with that easier because I know that I do so many times nowadays make the right choice do the right
I was
thing.
going to say that. Yeah,
So
that's how I cope. Yeah, that's
exactly.
how I was going to say. I say, when I get in that vulnerable moment and that disappointing era of Kim, Lord have mercy, look at the time you wasted. Now look at your credit report. You know, and you got this plan to come back, but boy, I tell you, those choices that you made, not thinking about yourself and not thinking about your future, or and here's the consequences. Like you said, I think about, I always have to pour in my own self the good choices I made.
Yeah.
I say, now every choice that I made wasn't bad. Though I made some good ass choices, and then I started laughing. And I said, man, when I walked into that investment, and when I paid that off, and and like you said, it starts building. I do my, sometimes when it's appropriate, I do my sessions as I'm, working with the public. Sometimes I'll say that too. I said, always remind yourself and think about every decision that you made, even with the bad decisions, but every decision that you'd made in life wasn't a fucked up one.
Yep.
Embrace those good ones. And
exactly.
Embrace those good ones.
And celebrate them. Celebrate
yes, celebrate
actually
them.
To say, wow, I've eaten something healthy now. Woo, well done.
Yes.
Well done.
We as human beings, we have not, and I'm starting to get that. Let me tell you, I'm a dancer, and I love music, but I would dance anywhere. So whenever if we ever meet, you're gonna see my little celebration dance, right?
Okay.
And,
that's why you're on.
Like, come on, Stefan, yeah. But I had to embrace that, and I love that feeling. And I say, I go beyond encouraging myself. I also celebrate me. I celebrate me. I celebrate the life that I'm able to have and choose to have in what I can do for me, and like I said, it starts every day. The only way, and the way that I give the best of my children and the best of my grandchildren and the best of my coworkers and the best of anybody, because I don't know who I'm going to meet on the street or who I'm going to talk to over the phone or who I'm going to even email. My day changes every day, but that giving myself that ultimate break in the very beginning of investing in me and giving the best gift that I could give was choosing me in the very beginning, when I open my eyes and connect with God and thanking him and be grateful for the opportunity for this day, is that I'm able to now, see a clearer vision and endure this journey even better than I have in the past, because I take that step of investing in me, celebrating me, and giving the best of myself to me first, so that everyone else can get the best of me. They wouldn't be able to. I said, even with my children, when I put them first, it's no way they could have got the best Kim. Now, the adult children and the minor is getting the best of me, because I have found the love for Kim. I have found the self-worth for Kim. I have chose Kim. So, and ultimately now they're getting the best of the version of Kim for Kim, not for no one else, but for Kim.
Beautiful. Oh, Kim. Wow. You're an amazing woman. No two ways around it. And the power and the passion that speaks from you is just intoxicating. And I hope you're going to be so infectious in your movement, in your going out there.
I hope so too.
Well, exactly.
I hope so too.
The more lives we can touch, and the more seeds we can plant to say it's okay not to be okay, and let's talk about it, and let's actually go out there and let's make this world a better place. And it starts with us.
And it's a process. It's not that, and I want the listeners to hear, it's not that because I have this voice, this is me every day, but it's not that it is every day is perfect because I have challenges. I have 4 adult children and a minor. I am almost 49 years old. Me and that minor have to take naps. I tell her, she calls me mama. And the oldest one starts laughing. I said, what else the hell is she going to call me? But mama, there's an old name, but I had her at 42. So y'all get with the program. But, challenges comes. I had to go through a ordeal financially because I'm now a single woman. I work and my credit, I got to start back from the bottom and help build my credit score up and everything like that. And I'm trying to build a little castle for me and my mini, because my oldest kids have their own life that they have to live. And I said, I had what you said. It starts with me first. I said, I choose not to wait for the castle to be given to me from a king. I got to work on my castle now. I'm going to choose to work on my castle now. So, and what I'm saying is, it's not like things go perfect in my life. Like challenges don't come. I remember getting almost $6,000 cut in my salary because I chose to inspire and to be a speaker, then be a supervisor at a position that I had been on for a while. And when they gave me that $6,000 cut, I was like, God, what am I going to do now? So, but the process, when, like you said, when you form and you choose this route to go, be determined enough to be consistent and have this practice of habit becomes habit, because when these challenges come and these issues come, you'll be able to go through them more settled, more with peace, more with integrity, more with and it'll build your character. I like the title of my book because I had to find that during the journeys and the challenges and the situations that I was in my life had built my essence, had built my epitome, had built and created who I am. And I'm still building it at it. It's not over until it's over. It's not over until it's over. I'm still building.
Girl, you've got another 50 years to go.
I'm like that diamond. I still get chiseled.
And that's beautiful. And you talk about your book. What is the name of your book?
It's called The Epitome of Kimmy. Epitome of Kimmy. Yes.
Where can people get that?
It's on Amazon and Goodreads, and I have a beautiful website that you'll be able to see myself and read my background and get to see my family, get to see my four adult children and my minor, and I have now 6 grandchildren. 5 is on there right now. The one that Princess Layla arrived after the 4th of July. So, and there you'll see the book cover. It's a little brown-skinned 5-year-old little girl. That was the only picture that I have. Well, that's the first picture that I have of in my adopted parents' home. In my biological parents' home, I have no pictures. I have no infant pictures. I have no pictures with them. So I thought it was more beneficial to start my story with a picture that I could claim that was one of my first given to me, which is I was 5 years old. And guess what, listeners? I love on that 5-year-old. She's a part of me, but she's not a broken little girl. She's a healed young woman, but she's a part of me. Yeah.
Wow. Brilliant. And what is your website?
It's www.Kimberly Anne Bell, Anne with the E, .com. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yes.
Guys, look down there into the description of the YouTube video or of the podcast. It's all in there. And Kimberly, you're an amazing woman. I can't wait to see how you transform further and how else you will touch the lives of others. Thank you so much for being who you are, the new you, who is speaking out to help other women get through their intergenerational conflict and through their challenges in their lives. Yes. There is, I am so honored that you were on my show. Thank you so much for coming along.
Thank you for the blessing. Thank you for the blessing. I appreciate it.
And you guys out there, look after yourself and live with passion. Bye.